of the Brooklyn Nets. Is that BS or real talk? We'll discuss that a little later. But first, Anthony Davis bumped legs with Nikola Jokic late in the second quarter on Sunday. He left the game and did not return. Davis sat out 2 games last week to rest that same Achilles injury that he had. So, Matt, let me ask you this. What do you make of this particular situation the Lakers find themselves in if AD has to sit out an extended period of time?
Well, George, this worries me a little bit. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this started last year in the playoffs, in the finals, where he kind of tweaked it. Obviously, a short off season. He didn't really get to rest it as long as possible. And I think our colleague Richard Jefferson point, you could be great if false move can re-aggravate it. It looks like that's what happened last night. If they have to miss AD for an extended amount of time during the regular season, I think they can keep the ship afloat. But for any championship aspirations, we all know AD has to be at his best.
So who has to step up the most in this situation, Matt, if you're the Lakers?
I think it's a tough situation because people are talking about, do you raise LeBron's minutes? Someone that first comes to mind is Montrezl Harrell, someone who's been having a great season that they picked up and acquired from the Clippers. I think his role increases, but normally, it's always the next man up mentality. But when you lose a star like AD and we're not sure how long he's going to be down, it's going to take a team effort to kind of accumulate what he was able to do by himself.
All right, we now welcome in senior NBA insider and the best in the business, Agent Wojnarowski. So, Woj, what is the latest on AD's Achilles?
Yeah, guys, he's getting that MRI, I'm told, in Denver, where the team played last night. And, they'll get a sense of if there's any more damage or anything that they've got to account for in that re-aggravation. But I think you can expect that Anthony Davis is going to sit for a period of time here, perhaps maybe even through until the All-Star break, which is March 5th to the 10th. But they need to see that MRI. He needs to go through that process, and then there will be a timeline from there. But I think you heard Anthony Davis last night. It's obvious they're going to be cautious with this, and they need him to stay healthy. They need this to not be a lingering issue for them. And so I think you'll expect that, Anthony Davis probably is not going to play here for a period of time until they get him past this, hopefully.
Well, this team obviously has a ton of depth. They added a lot of depth here in the offseason. When you look at just kind of the current makeup of the roster, we were just talking about it, Matt and I, who needs to step up in these situations?
Well, I think, certainly for the Lakers, Kyle Kuzma probably playing, a more significant role, wanting to get great consistency out of him. Matt mentioned, Montrezl Harrell. You're going to have to see if you lose a player of Anthony Davis's stature for a period of time, you're going to have to see guys elevate all over the team. There's only so much you can ask of LeBron. You can't. Listen, they can't, and certainly they know this, you can't ask too much from LeBron in a regular season stretch. He has played, he's been there every night this year. He's probably the front runner for the MVP. But I think most importantly, like if you're the Lakers, you're not worried about seeding. You're not worried about home court advantage, especially in this season, perhaps without fans. But this is a group that knows if it's healthy, if Anthony Davis is at the top of his game, they'll play anybody anywhere in the postseason. They just need him to be healthy.
Woj, you've got a story out in regards to what's going on in Detroit. What is the situation between Blake Griffin and the Pistons at the moment?
Yeah, Blake Griffin, their GM Troy Weaver told me today, is not going to be in the lineup here moving forward. They're going to look for a trade, and certainly buyout discussions could be part of a focus here at some point. Griffin's owed over $50 million on this year and next year's contract. It's really going to be difficult to trade him and to find a deal where money could match up for where Blake is in his career right now. But it's been amicable. They've loved really the way Blake has handled what's been a tough spot for a player of his stature, being in the middle of a rebuild in Detroit. And I think for both sides, to allow him to step away, let his agent and the team, work through something. And I think there's going to be a marketplace for Blake Griffin. Perhaps it's in the buyout market if his agent, Sam Goldfeder with Excel and Troy Weaver and Detroit get to that. But for now, they'll keep looking at the trade market. And if you're bringing in a Blake Griffin, a contending team, you want him for the playoffs. There's no rush to get him on your roster, perhaps right now. But listen, he's a player who, while he doesn't play above the rim anymore, he's not the All-NBA Blake Griffin that people remember. He still has shown this season, to be a pretty efficient offensive player. He's shooting. You see him obviously stepping out, shooting the three. Played a back-to-back last week and played well. Helped Detroit win in Boston. So there will be a market for Blake Griffin. Hard to imagine, though, it may be via trade.
So let's bring in Matt Barnes again here, NBA champion. Matt, how desirable is Blake Griffin on the market from what you've seen out of him thus far?
I think a healthy Blake Griffin is very desirable. Now, is he 100% healthy? I'm not sure. I think gone are the Lob City days of Blake Griffin, but, like Woj pointed out, he still has worked on his game and is an efficient offensive player, so he can definitely help a playoff contending team down the stretch. I agree. I think most likely it's going to be in the buyout space considering how much money he's still owed, but Blake can still definitely contribute to a team that's going to try to make a run for a championship.
And finally, Woj, there's a similar situation in Cleveland with Andre Drummond. What do we know about that?
It is similar, and he, like Blake Griffin, he will, he's going to separate from the Cavaliers here. He's not going to be active anymore for them. They're going to work on trades. He's got only 1 year left on his deal. He's an expiring contract, around $28 million. Perhaps there might be some avenues where a trade is possible, but still very difficult. He may be another player who ends up in the buyout market. They haven't had those conversations yet. I think his goal is for Cleveland to find a trade, but they're transitioning to Jared Allen as their center of the future, 22 years old, and putting him with that young group of guards and wings they have in Cleveland. And the idea, I think, to share time with a young player, given where Drummond is in his career, a player who's been a two-time All-Star, very similarly makes sense for him to step away and allow the team and his agent to see what they can find out in the marketplace.
Matt, which team, you get to play fantasy GM, which team is a good fit for Andre Drummond?
I think to be able to go where Jared Allen came from, if he can, tighten up that front line over in Brooklyn and split time with DeAndre Jordan, I think that would be a good fit. Drummond still has, a lot left in the tank. I just think him understanding what his game is. I think he needs to understand that he's a rebounder, a shot blocker, a lob catcher, and a paint protector, and kind of stick with that and go with that. Big body, still has some, a lot of juice left, so it'll be interesting to see where he lands. But I also agree. I think it'll be a buyout situation. Although he is in his last year of his contract, to me it looks like a buyout situation. But he can definitely, again, similar to Blake Griffin, similar to Kevin Love, can help a team that's contending for a title if healthy.
Woj, obviously you're not reporting anything here, but we're asking you to kind of speculate in regards to who would be in that market for Andre Drummond. Would the Nets make some sense, and are there others in your opinion?
Yeah, I do think there would be interest from Brooklyn maybe it's the buyout market. It's hard to see how the contracts line up. I know this right now. Cleveland, I'm told, has not really been engaged in any serious conversations on a trade. They're going to, really continue to try to navigate the marketplace, see what might work. Sometimes there's 3-team scenarios, and a bigger salary can be part of a broader deal, but it's hard in a one right now for Andre Drummond to see where that is. But then in the end, he'd have to decide he wants to do a buyout, and he's not shown any inclination that that's something he's interested in right now. So we'll monitor it. We'll see how that plays out. But certainly, there's a great need in Brooklyn. He fits the profile perfectly, but can they find a way to acquire him?
Man, basketball never stops, and things are only just heating up. He is the best in the business. Agent Wojnarowski. Woj, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
All right. After the break, Giannis calls the Jazz the best team in the West. Is that BS or real talk? We'll discuss that and much more coming up here after the break. You're watching The Jump. It's humility. Cavs Clippers. Pat Bev hoists a shot from the corner and turns around before it goes in, Steph style or LeBron style. Beverly said, I need this bleep to go viral. Clinton Yates, welcome to the show. Do you like the confidence from Pat?
I love it. I am the only person in this room that has once dressed as Patrick Beverly on national television for Halloween, so everything he does, I'm about.
All right, fair enough. There we go.
Normally when you have to plead for something to go viral, it might not, but that's a great shot by Bev.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Let's move on. Make punctuality. Death, taxes, and Dame time. He did it again in crunch time versus the Mavs. Matt, has Dame entered the MVP discussion?
I think he's in the discussion every single year. You know, since he's entered the league, he's had 33 go-ahead shots in the last minute, including the playoffs. He's definitely one of the best players, and if not number one, top 2 or 3 clutch players we have in the game.
George, this is one of those things where how you define value is extremely important. Of course, he's one of the most valuable players in the league, but is he one of the most outstanding? Probably won't get that vote this season.
All right, next, Miss boxing out. Lakers Nuggets. Shot is off here. And here comes Kyle Kuzma to clean it up. Matt, how important will he be now that AD could be nursing an injury for a minute?
He's going to be huge, and he's been playing well of late, rebounding the ball on both ends, slashing, knocking down open shots. Kyle Kuzma is going to be a big part of them moving forward, but there's a little unspoken tension or beef between Porter Jr. and Kuzma that I've kind of picked up on, and I love it when they play against each other.
Okay.
I was going to say that's not the Kuzma we've seen a ton of. If he's jumping on people's backs just to get buckets like that, that's the Kuzma you want out in Lakerland for sure.
For sure. Next, make
Absolutely.
peach baskets. This is from Friday night, but it's too good not to show again. Look at this obscene ball movement by the Jazz in a big win over the Bucks. So, Clinton, is this what Dr. Naismith envisioned when he created the sport of basketball?
I don't think Dr. Naismith envisioned this level of disrespect. All those passes came with supreme confidence, including that one with Spider straight across the key. I can't believe they did that to him. That put the game away for me. It was an amazing moment.
Ball movement is beautiful, and anytime you can finish it with a made shot, it makes it even better.
I love it. I love it. The Jazz are rolling now for sure. All right, and now it's time for...
The ball deserves to go in the crowd after a bull move like that.
I think it's bull. I just thought it was bull.
Don't give me that crap!
Yeah, time for everybody's favorite game, BS or Real Talk. We give you the quotes. You tell us how true they are. So, welcome back into The Jump, by the way. I'm George Sedano, in for our fearless leader, Rachel Nichols, and joined by our columnists from the undefeated, Clinton Yates, and, of course, NBA champion Matt Barnes hanging out with us here. So, let's start with some interesting comments made by the back-to-back MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, over the weekend. So, Giannis said in their loss to the Jazz, he paid him a huge compliment. He paid the Jazz a tremendous compliment. Here's what he said.
Today we played the game against the best team in the West. They've been playing amazing. They won with this game 17 out of their last 18. You know, they're playing good. They're moving the ball. They're making threes. They're finding the rollers. They're keeping it simple. They're going to the front line. They're pretty much doing everything. They're having fun.
So, Matt, is Giannis calling the Jazz the best team in the West BS or Real Talk?
I think it's real talk, and not only the West, I think the league right now. They're definitely playing the best. They have the best record in the league, and it's going to be a good game tonight, meeting up the best team in the Eastern Conference and the 76ers. But the Jazz are playing on another level now with their ball movement and their three-point shooting, and Donovan Mitchell's been on a mission since some felt Shaq disrespected him a few weeks ago.
I think it's real talk in that he could say a lot of other things, but he very much specified in the West, which to me is a bit of a sneak diss towards the Lakers. I mean, look, there's a lot of good teams in this league, and if you think that the best team in the West out there is the team that just beat you, they might be the best team in the league. That's probably worth admitting, but that's not what he said.
All right, I'm going to be like in the middle here because I think it's real talk in the regular season. I think it's BS in the postseason,
Right.
especially if AD is back and healthy. Look, as great as the Jazz are, guys, guys, and we saw the crazy ball movement. We know how well they shoot threes. We know how well coached they are with Quinn Snyder and how well they play defense. I still feel like LeBron and AD are their kryptonite. They don't have anyone that can guard LeBron, as great as Royce O'Neal has been thus far this season defensively. And we know AD has had his way with Rudy Gobert. So I'm going to go in the middle. It's real talk in the regular season, probably BS in the postseason. All right, let's move on to the Nets.
I feel like they're a piece away.
Yeah, I feel you, for sure. Let's move on to the Nets, who blew out the Warriors in Saturday's game.
I just looked at him and I said, "You're the point guard, and I'm going to play shooting guard." And that was as simple as that.
I feel like this is, what was that movie with Tom Hanks? I'm the captain now. Clinton, is that BS or real talk?
I think it's real talk, but only for the purposes that whether or not he actually said that, it's what needs to happen, in my opinion, for this Nets team and their offense to work the best. I honestly believe that from just simply a scheme standpoint, they and their offense work better when that's actually the case. So if Kyrie can admit it to himself, never mind to Harden, I think they got a better thing going than if it's the other way around for sure.
And I completely agree. I think one thing that's always been overlooked about James Harden is his playmaking ability. If you remember back in OKC when it was a young Russ and KD, at the end of the game, it was James making plays for everyone else. So James is a great facilitator, and sometimes I think that gets overlooked because he's such a tremendous scorer as well. So when guys know their roles, the team plays well, and everything goes a lot smoother than when it's up in the air guessing who's what.
Yeah, I'm going to go with real talk, too, just because, to your point, Matt and Clinton, you know, James Harden has averaged over 11 assists now 3 times, including this season in his career. And it started when Mike D'Antoni first arrived in Houston. He had 11.2 assists that season, led the league in assists. And by the way, at that time, he was only taking 20 shots a game. Now, every year after the fact, right, the shot volume increased, and I think that's where kind of things changed for the Rockets as far as the way they played offense and the way they used James, particularly as a playmaker. But I think Kyrie's stating the obvious. He is the point guard on this team, and Kyrie prefers to be off the ball, I feel like, at least watching his game over the years. All right, next, the Celtics took a loss to the Wizards yesterday. They've lost 4 of their past 5 and 7 of their last 10 games. So Boston is now 13-13 on the season. Here's what Kemba Walker said after the most recent loss.
No, we just got to figure some things out. Positive, it ain't many positives, I'm going to be honest. We're not good right now. That's on us. That's on myself and, you know, some of the guys who's been around. You know, we got to change some things, and we will. And we will. I'm very confident that we will change things and we will continue to get better. It'll change because it's not a great feeling the way we're playing. And, you know, can't get no worse than this. So we're going to fix it.
So, Matt, is Kemba saying that things can't get worse for the Celtics, BS or real talk?
I think it's real talk. I think right now this is kind of the dog days of the season. If you guys remember, normally early January to mid-January, the dog days of the season leading up to All-Star break. These are the dog days of the season right now with this new schedule we're playing on. So mid-February up until the end of February where the All-Star break hits in March. These are just the dog days. But I think what's most important for this team is consistency out of Kemba and his health being on the court. Jaylen Brown and Tatum are two of the best one of the best young duos in the game. They need consistency out of Kemba. They need him to be on the court and they need him in the playoffs. So I think they're kind of hit rock bottom right now. But like I said, there's a lot of teams underachieving right now because these are the dog days of the of the season. Guys are waiting for this All-Star break to hit.
I absolutely agree it's the dog days because if you lose to the Wizards and you barely score 100 points, you're actively not doing anything correct. And I'm not even being flip about that. If that's a team you fall to, it's time to reevaluate. And while a lot of people look at the Heat as the most disappointing, I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think the Celtics are the most disappointing team this season in the Eastern Conference. They're both underperforming and they don't seem to be able to win anything. They can't make shots. You can't make shots. You can't score 90 points against the Wizards, barely. You're probably not that good of a basketball team right now. I think Kemba's exactly right.
See, I'm going to go with BS on this one, and this was tough. And I think because a lot of this hinges, just to Kemba's point, a lot of this hinges on his own health, right? He has been a guy who's been dealing with injuries dating back to the bubble last season, right? He came back to this season late. But I still feel like this team needs a move, okay? They lost Gordon Hayward, right? Marcus Smart is also injured. I feel like they need someone. They've got very little depth on this team. Jaylen Brown has been fantastic, right, this season. He's the most improved player in the league, I think. You know, Jason Tatum is a star. Kemba's dealing with some injuries. Smart is dealing with some injuries. And even with those guys in the lineup, I felt like their depth could use some help. So I'm going to go BS on this one. I think it's not just about playing harder. It's about Danny Ainge needing to make a move. All right, coming up, don't look now, but the Phoenix Suns have won 6 in a row. What has driven their recent... Since Jimmy Butler's return to the lineup, Miami is 5-3, and they're second in defensive efficiency and opponent field goal percentage. And the Heat have crept up to the 9th spot out in the East. So, Matt, what do the Heat need to add before the trade deadline to be a real contender out East again?
That's a tough call. You know, I think possibly a point guard, but this team goes as far as Jimmy goes. And with all due respect, I kind of feel like they overachieved last year. They got hot at the right time, so I didn't mean it disrespectfully, but no one expected them to make it to the finals. But they played hard, blue-collar basketball, so they kind of come back down to earth this year. Jimmy's been in and out, and the team has been inconsistent. With Jimmy in that lineup, it's not always his numbers. It's most of the time just his presence and the security blanket for these younger players to know that they got their guy back. So it'll be interesting moving forward to see if they make any moves. But like I said at the very beginning of the season, this team goes as far as Jimmy takes them.
I agree with that, and I hope that they don't go so far as to blow it up in order to try to make sure that they can get back to the success of last season. So as much as they might have overachieved in the bubble, I still think there's a little bit of sort of bubble hangover from this squad, because for as focused as this team was, I don't know that every team was that in the bubble, and that's what they got by on a lot between Spo leading them and what Butler provided from a leadership standpoint. So without Jimmy being the Jimmy of old and the Jimmy of what we know of him, you can't expect this team to be the same. And I just hope that they don't tear it all down because they're, have changed expectations based on kind of a glory run last year that didn't end up coming to fruition.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you guys on Jimmy being kind of the catalyst here, but I do think it's about their collective parts, right? And, it's not just Jimmy. It's all those guys spreading the floor, right? Whether it's Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero, a lot was put on him because Jimmy missed 3 weeks, okay? That's a lot of games that he missed, basically a half the season almost at that point. And then Goran Dragic has been out for a ton of injuries as well. Bam has been a little bit in and out of the lineup as well. But Hero and Robinson have not hit the three-pointers at the clips that they're used to. Hero from a percentage standpoint and Robinson from a volume standpoint. Teams have really locked in on Duncan Robinson as a weapon, particularly that dribble handoff game with him and Bam. So I feel like the Heat need to add another player to kind of help open some of that up. They had Jay Crowder last year, and they need a Jay Crowder type because obviously they can't get Jay Crowder back. They need a guy who's tough, a guy who can shoot threes, and a guy who can pass and play some defense. Yeah. I think if they add just something like that, they can be right in that mix, that kind of 4-5 range again. And at that point, they become a tough out potentially. Do you agree, Matt, that if they can make a small move, they could be a tough out?
Yeah. Trevor Ariza type player, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes you mentioned Duncan and Tyler. When you're middle of the way or bottom of the scouting report, you can get away with things your first year or two. But once you have a blowout performance, say in the bubble or in the playoffs last year, you're going to be at the top of the scouting report. And people are going to definitely lock in on you and really game plan around, Jimmy, Tyler, Bam, and Duncan. So to see Duncan not get as many shots doesn't surprise me because he's not sneaking up on anybody. The world knows what kind of shooter he is, and he has to have attention to detail every time he steps on the floor, and that's what teams are doing.
And I think to that point that Barnes makes is that sometimes when you're a player that young, you just got to get better. You got to perform. You know what I mean? It's not as if being at the top of the scouting report is a problem. If you can perform and, you can do what you once did, I think that bodes better than just trying to sort of find somebody else who may or may not fit. And, I'm not saying that they're underperforming in the sense that, they're not playing well at all, but I do think these are young guys that have space to improve as they get better in this league. And Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero are two guys who need to do it in order for the Heat to expect to do anything in the playoffs.
All right, it's time for In the Zone, brought to you by AutoZone. Let's take a look. We got to give the Suns some love here because they've won 6 straight games after last night. Phoenix is in 4th place in the Western Conference. Devin Booker was just named Western Conference Player of the Week. So, Matt, what's your biggest takeaway during this win streak?
This is the CP3 effect. I knew once they got their chemistry down, CP3 was going to be the best thing happen to Booker and Aiden. CP has a long list of making bigs better. Tyson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan, Clint Capella. Aiden might be the most talented out of all four of those, so he's benefiting. And then taking pressure off Devin Booker. Devin Booker is one of the best young scorers in this game. So I think CP3's mindset, and although he hasn't won a championship, he's a winner. And he's an extension of Monty Williams on that court. And he has the Phoenix Suns playing great. They were my team to watch this season, and they haven't let me down at all.
We remember how good they were in the bubble last season, and that was no fluke comparatively to the Heat. You mentioned Monty Williams, but I think that CP3 deserves a lot of credit here. Remember when he went to OKC and people thought, he might not even go. He might kind of mail it in. Nope, that didn't happen. Then he goes to Phoenix. We're going to mail it in. Nope, that didn't happen either. Both of those teams got better. CP3 has established himself as a guy that when you need a problem solved, he can solve it from a leadership standpoint. It's great to see because this is one of the more talented teams in the league that was sort of floundering, not really figuring out what they could do. Now they have. It's a really fun squad to watch.
It's funny. I was watching DeAndre Ayton in the post game yesterday, and he was asked by Dwayne Rankin, who covers the Phoenix Suns for the Arizona Republic. He was asked basically like, hey, what's the big difference here? And he pointed out the kind of accountability that they're dealing with and how in practice they will talk things through and they'll go at each other a little bit, in a productive way, right? And be constructive. And Matt, you said it, the CP3 effect. You know that Chris Paul wants things done a certain way because he knows what it takes to win at a high level, albeit having not won a championship. He's been as close as you can get to getting to the finals and certainly has been a fantastic player, one of the best point guards in the history of the sport. So, those conversations in practice with him, you've been a part of that. What are those like?
Just competitive. I think in the past people have complained about his delivery. I think he's worked on his delivery, but everything he's saying is always right. And another thing we haven't mentioned is their defensive efficiency. I want to say they're number 6 in the league at the defensive rating, and that's very important out there. So the CP3 effect is in full effect on both sides. But like I said, he's a great communicator and listens to everyone and talks to everyone. And I think that's all that's going on is these guys are all in sync, all on the same page. And we're really getting to see how good Aiden and Booker are now that there's someone to facilitate to both of them and kind of mentor and guide both of them as well.
Yeah, no doubt, man. He has been fantastic for sure. So up next, we look ahead at John Wall's first game back in D.C. tonight after he was traded for Russell Westbrook. Should the Wizards already regret making this trade? We'll discuss in just a moment. Stick around here on The Jump. Starts with Stephen A's pregame, Sports Center at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Here's what The Jump recommends for today. Our pal Clinton Yates, who's here, dissects Washington's relationship to John Wall prior to his messy split with the Wizards. For those at home, Wall is making his return to D.C. tonight as a member of the Rockets. So, Clinton, should the Wizards regret trading John Wall?
It's a tough question, and I'll start with just from the basketball standpoint. The Wizards have quite obviously lost this trade. We talked earlier in the show about how if you fall to a team like that, you probably got to reevaluate what you're doing. They got the worst record in the East. They're arguably the worst team in the league. And on top of that, Westbrook, and this is not about him personally. It's about the fact that the production that you hoped from whomever that player might have been has simply not been there, even if you get a so-called nice amount of triple-doubles. From a basketball standpoint, it's a major issue. The thing is, though, from a cultural standpoint, and Barnes, I'm from D.C. This is a very important thing to me simply as a basketball fan more largely, never mind a fan of the NBA, was that the way that he got out of town, they did him dirty. You sold tickets against this guy coming back. You sold tickets against the plan for him and Beal to be the old House of Zards, the backcourt that everybody wanted to see together, the backcourt that everybody assumed was going to grow and eventually become a contender. And then to ship him off because of an incident like what we thought happened on IG Live and claiming that he's some sort of a bad guy who's not a character person, unacceptable. DC basketball fans know better, and it's not just about the NBA because we know stars because a lot of them come from where we're from. So overall, I just think it was a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth how it happened, never mind who was involved. The guy was the most important player in the franchise history under the name Wizards. We all know that. You can't just trade him away because you're upset about something that happened on social media.
I completely agree. Him and Bradley Beal are very, very similar from a standpoint of what you're going to get on the court, but also productive citizens in the community off the court. I know they did a lot of giving back, and I know it left Wizards fans with a bad taste in the mouth the way he exited. Do you regret it? Possibly, only they can tell us that. But at the same time, I kind of felt like there was also a ceiling with Brad and John and what they were able to accomplish. And I kind of felt the same way, although Russell Westbrook is a more accomplished player. He's very similar to John Wall. So to me, the question in D.C. is, do you build around Brad or do you trade him for young assets and completely rebuild? Because this is probably the worst team in the league and they're not really going anywhere. And you hate to see Bradley Beal waste all his great years for an unproductive team.
So, Clinton, you just said, you're a lifelong Wizards fan. And, of course, they're in last place in the Eastern Conference, as you alluded to as well. How do they climb out of this situation? And what do you make of Matt's comments there? Like his question to you, do you trade Bradley Beal and hit the reset?
I've thought that in previous machinations of what this front office was and has been, that would have been the smart move. But right now, Bradley is all you've got. You've got to hope that he wants to stay, and you can find a way to get some sort of pennies on the dollar for players or picks or room for Westbrook down the line, and then you just tank out and rebuild. I mean, there's nothing else really that you can think of that's going to be hopeful. And that's what the point is here, Barnes. I know it sounds funny, but the hope of what John Wall brought in a scenario in which nobody ever believed they were going to contend is half the battle here. And if you've traded away the one guy anybody actually liked, when nobody really cared if they won anyway, what are you doing? That's what the issue is here. So hopefully Brad wants to hang around. Hopefully they can get some picks and maybe something happens, but I don't trust this team across the street. So
Matt, do you think Beal should stick around or should he want out?
Bradley Beal's always going to do the right thing. He's going to say the right thing. He's going to continue to play hard. But at the end of the day, if they take Clinton's, idea and run with it, what is that? What is that? A 2, 3, possibly 4-year process? And all the while, Bradley Beal's leading the league in scoring and not going anywhere. So, like I said, I would hate to see him waste his time in his prime years. You saw his wife put out a tweet a couple weeks ago that they're tired of it. He's a consummate pro. He's going to show up and play every day, say the right thing. But I think that they need to let him, cut his wings, let him free, and go try to win a ring allow him to win a ring somewhere else and rebuild.
George, nobody thinks that Wall is going to the Hall of Fame, but there are a lot of people that wouldn't mind seeing his number retired in D.C., and that tells you a lot about that guy.
All right, fair enough. All right, coming up, Joel Embiid and Rudy Gobert are going head-to-head in our League Pass game of the night. What do you expect?